Viney, what a game he's played. Steins against Morris. Morris went through without the ball. Todd Viney has been absolutely sensational. This one was trapped just inside.
Inside Melbourne this week. Clint Stanaway with you. Ben Gibson's back on the podcast.
Good to be back once again.
We're heading deep into the archives. We're taking a trip down memory lane because it's retro round this weekend. Do you have a favourite Demon memory, Ben?
Well, I'm only 22, so I don't have too many memories of our guest today, but Brad Green was a favourite of mine back in the day.
Was he there? He'd love to hear that. He listens to the podcast each and every week. You alluded to our special guest. It is none other than Todd Viney. Welcome, Todd.
Yeah, thanks, Clint.
Great to have you. Retro round, it's surely the case that you wear the headband around the office all week. Is that the case?
Well, no, I haven't brought it out for a while, but this week certainly with Retro Round coming up, it's been something that I've thought about, but I haven't had a lot of support from my colleagues or my teammates, former teammates, that thought I was an idiot then, and they still think I'm an idiot now.
233 games for the D's between 87 and 99, a two-time club champion, and doing some great work at the club right here, right now. No doubt this place holds a special place in your heart. It
does. It's been a huge part of my life, been here since the age of 20 or 21. So it's been a big part of my life, and it still is. And obviously to see my son obviously playing as captain of the footy club is really special. So no, I bleed red and blue.
Yep.
Like everyone that's listening to the show, obviously.
Member of the team of the century. How's it sort of feel to be a part of that with some iconic names of the club?
Yeah, it's something when it happened, when the team was announced back in the day, it was sort of something that you sort of don't think a lot about. But certainly now, when you think about the great history of the footy club, the great players that we have, to be part of that team and to walk over to the MCC and see that team of the century photo, pride of place in the members area, it's certainly something really special. And the only thing I'm disappointed about really is that Ron Brassey got the starting ruck rover spot and, I was allocated to the bench.
The interchange. By the way, Ben, it's great to have a Viney back on the podcast because Jack's been MIA He's taken a bit of a holiday, hasn't he?
Been missing in action, and I've had to step in his place for a few weeks.
Which you've enjoyed thoroughly as
and
well.
And it's gone to another level too, Ben. I must say that
it's all professionalism around the place.
Ratings are through the roof. So,
hey, Todd, a very generic question to start with, but what's your favourite Demon memory? Have you got one that just sits beautifully? I mean, 87 was an extraordinary year, wasn't it? Just that run, the back end of the season.
Well, it was. I mean, that was my first year, would you believe? First year of AFL football. And I got asked the other day about favourite top 5 memories, and really nearly all my memories go back to 1987 for so many reasons. First game, getting the opportunity to play with Robbie Flower was a childhood hero and became such a good friend of mine. And then the run into finals, haven't not played finals since 64. It was all about giving Robbie Flower one last chance to win the last 6 in a row to get there. The famous game at Whitten Oval.
Yeah, I was there that day.
Yeah, well, nearly everyone in the world was.
Exactly. It was extraordinary. The radios were going, listening to the result, obviously down the Geelong Road as well. Yeah. It was something extraordinary, wasn't it?
No, it was. There were so many things that had to fall our way, that win the last 6 games, as I said, but also we needed results to go our way, and particularly in that last game for the Hawks to beat Geelong down there. It's always tough to win down at Kardinia Park. So for that to happen, 3/4 time, leaving the huddle, we were playing well, and John Sell, who was the team manager at the time, basically lied to us and said, all we need to do is win this last quarter because the Hawks were touching up Geelong. And then to get, 3 or 4 minutes before the siren went and a great roar went out in the outer, and we thought the siren had gone, but it really was only when the Hawks had just hit the front down at Kardinia Park. So many fond memories of 1987.
I certainly wasn't there, but was looking at the YouTube highlights just last week, and that elimination final, 30 seconds in, you slot one from the boundary. Nice start to that game.
It was. We had unbelievable momentum. It's a little bit similar to last year in a lot of respects for the Demons. But we got into the finals on the back of those 6 games. Nearly the whole of Victoria were barracking for Melbourne. The underdog hadn't played in the finals, and then we played North Melbourne in that first elimination final, and packed MCC members. The ball spilled out to that member side, and I managed to slot one from the wing. Now, I was not a renowned goal kicker, so when I kick one from the boundary, you know the momentum's continuing and we're always going to win.
Now, the camera angle wasn't that flattering. Did it definitely go through?
Definitely. Definitely, and I tell the story that I actually wasn't trying to kick the goal, I was actually trying to centre it, and the wind blew it back.
Beautiful.
88 was an interesting year too, the follow-up year. When you reflect on 88, what do you think?
Well, just you think how now I think about, that was just such an opportunity missed.
Yeah.
And you realise now, after all these years, that how hard it is to get to that point.
Of course, yeah.
So we were, from the back of 1987, missing the grand final in 1987 with the famous Jimmy Steins run across the mark. We were so close that year, but then to follow it up and get into the grand final, we had a young, exciting team with some more experienced players, but then to get blown out of the water on that day was certainly disappointing. It bloody rained on the day too. You always dream about grand finals and being a beautiful sunny day. But it rained. It wasn't a great sign for things to come. But the Hawks, they were an unbelievable team. So many champions in that team. We were still a young team developing. But to be so close, not to really put our best foot forward, get blown out of the water by a champion team, was certainly disappointing.
Obviously, your history with the club extends beyond your playing career. You coached 5 games back in 2011. Talk us through that game against Port Adelaide, last game of the season, the centre bounce. How many blokes did you have line up?
Well, I thought I was always an innovative coach, and so decided to only go with the ruck and 2 midfielders in the stoppage. So I'm not sure how that happened, but obviously communication wasn't at the forefront, so it wasn't a great start to the game, and we ended up losing. But a great experience, 5 games as a senior coach. I never thought I'd coach because I wasn't actually an assistant coach in that year. I was decided to get out of coaching the year before, so. Once Jimmy Steins, a great mate of mine, said, "Would you stand in for those 5 games?" I said yes, but it was a lot of stress for those 5 weeks and only 1 win. So the club obviously thought, "We're not making you the full-time coach."
The boys this week face the Magpies at the MCG. A beautiful history with the Collingwood Football Club. Well, most of the time beautiful anyway. 1993 was a year that I remember fondly. I remember sitting there behind the goals at the MCG when Jacko kicked 9 on Ronnie McEwen, and the famous aeroplane celebration as well. Do you remember that day? It was a big day.
Yeah, it was a massive day. And Alan Jakovich, one of the great characters of the Melbourne Footy Club, over the whole journey, really. There wouldn't be too many more bigger personalities, and he was in such great form during that period of time. He came from nowhere, and then all of a sudden was just ripping games of footy apart. Flamboyant character, the jumper over the head, and always gave the opposition a hard time, but magnificent player. But to beat Collingwood at any time is fantastic. MCG that day was super.
And then in 94, obviously made another run through the finals under Barmy, of all people, got to a preliminary final out west.
Yeah,
another opportunity missed, but still played some glorious footy that year.
Yeah, no, it was not another. We've had some great. Although we haven't had the ultimate success, we've had some teams that have really competed well and were highly respected. I reckon if you went around to most of the teams in that era and said you're going to play Melbourne, you always knew what you were going to get. It was going to be a tough game, and we had some great results. We sort of punched above our weight. We were probably maybe a player short or whatever, or some of our best players got injured probably too soon and we didn't see the best of them. But we got to another prelim, beating West Coast, as we found out last year, beating West Coast in a prelim final. I don't think they've ever lost one over there. So that year we certainly ran out of gas in that prelim final against a great team. And to rub salt in the wounds, the bus didn't turn up and we had to walk back to the Duxton Hotel after the game.
It's an extraordinary story, isn't it?
It is amazing.
That's just, as you say, rubbing salt into the wounds.
Yeah, and didn't we know it? I mean, the whole city seemed to be walking back to the Duxton Hotel, so we copped it the whole way back. And for some reason, I thought we were in whether we had the showers weren't working either, we might have been still in our footy gear. Like, it was a disaster. Sometimes when you played it, talking about retro games, when you played at Moorabbin, they found a way to make the ground really wet and heavy, muddy, and the showers never worked. So you always have a shower back at the Junction Oval after Moorabbin games.
We touched on the Collingwood clash this week. We've got some pre-game entertainment. Jeff Farmer and Peter Dacos going head-to-head in a goal-kicking challenge. You saw a little bit of Jeff Farmer. What did you make of his skills?
Oh, look, just unbelievable. He was an unbelievable player, and at the time I didn't appreciate it as much, but when he'd take mark of the year on Gary Lyon's head and handball to Gary when he's not looking, after taking a screamer. But he could do everything. That 60 metre torpedo that he kicked when he started the chain of that play from a back pocket, got 2 handball receives, bounce, and kicked a torpedo. I mean, that's unbelievable stuff. You'd never see again. So he gave me some of the biggest highlights in footy. We played in the final of the MCG one year. I'm trying to think who it was, but he turned the game. Or it said him and David Schwartz were phenomenal talents, and when they were on song, you just knew you weren't going to get beaten.
Good to see Jeffrey back at the club. His son's welcome back here any time as well. Just quickly, Todd, you speak of Indigenous teammates. Sean Charles was one I loved watching. Yeah. Do you remember the day that he actually was forced to get a chopper to training and it landed smack bang in the middle of the Junction Oval? His car broke down, didn't it?
Yeah, his car broke down, and Shawnee was one of those unbelievable talents. So that was certainly a memory of mine, turning up in a helicopter. Normally it's a high-price recruit from interstate that would get that honour, but no, Shawnee got picked up in the chopper and landed. But the other thing that comes to mind, top of mind with Sean, was when we had done all of pre-season and we're doing 100-metre sprints, which at the time was seen as the pinnacle of your pre-season competition. And you had to be extremely fit to do it. It was Shawnee's first training session. He turned up in tracksuit pants and high-top basketball boots and did the hundreds like he'd done 5. And at the last one, won the last one, the 100 by 20 metres. It was just a phenomenal athlete.
Unbelievable.
Good stuff. All right, Todd, great reflections. We're going to get more with a former teammate of yours. You might know him, Paul Hopgood. Hoppy's going to join us on Inside Melbourne with Thanks to Zurich after this very short break.
Thanks to our co-major partner and podcast sponsor, Zurich. For over 100 years, they've been ensuring the people and the things you truly love. And just like you, they truly love footy and they truly love Melbourne.
Welcome back to Inside Melbourne with Thanks to Zurich. We face the Magpies this weekend, as we've already touched on. They're destined to be some old faces in the crowd. I say old, he's not too old, but a former teammate of yours, Todd. Yes. Paul Hopgood.
Yeah, Paul is a fantastic young fella. I mean, I say young fella because I'm about 10 years older, I reckon, and he still seems like only yesterday he was running around a brash youngster. So welcome, Paul.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Great to hear your voice, Hoppy. Just first and foremost, what are you doing these days with yourself?
Look, Clint, I've moved into the business world. I run a transport logistics and technology business called AFS Logistics. We're based out at Melbourne Airport. We've got 100-odd employees and a fair customer base that we're servicing and supporting all their logistic requirements.
Good stuff. You still, I see you around the traps at the mighty MCG and on your state trips every now and then. You still love going to watch the boys. You got a heavy involvement in the past players.
Yeah, so I'm on the past players committee, and again, we've got a really good core group of past players that sort of come through the Northey, Barm, Danaher era that, we stick pretty close, and we're working pretty hard as a past players group to support and help each of our past players through the various transitions they're making from footy back into the real world.
Paul, Ben here. Times have changed a bit in football. We talk about professionalism these days. How did Todd go? How do you reckon he'd stack up against his son Jack these days?
Oh, look, Todd was pretty professional, to be honest with you, as well. We weren't full-time back in the day when it all started. Todd was a tennis coach, so he kept himself fit from the tennis side of things as well. But we all had a good time in the off-season, though, and a few of us used to come back with the additional kilos, which gave us a good opportunity to work them off in the pre-season. So, we worked hard and played hard back in the days.
Yeah, there was nothing wrong with having a beer after the game, Hoppy.
No. And again, I think unfortunately this is something these guys miss out on a little bit. Not that having a beer after the game's the be-all and end-all, but it's the camaraderie piece. It's the ability to de-stress from a pretty intense industry that these guys live in as well. And I think the other part of it was the integration and the ability to mix with supporters and key supporters and other football-related people to start building your networks and start looking at what a career looks like outside of footy. And I think those are the things from the social and definitely that connectivity perspective that these guys miss out on, unfortunately. They get paid a lot more money now and they work harder and they train a lot harder and everything else that goes with it. But I'm really have a genuine interest in the transition from where they go from living that, I think the average AFL career now is 4 years, living those 4 years, and the best come out 10 or 12 years and they're well equipped and being well paid. But it's those guys who are in the system for 3, 4, 5 years and they come out and have to go and rebuild or restart their careers to go and live the rest of their lives. I think it's really important that we support that and focus on that as well.
Some good points. But I remember, we're talking about professionalism and talking retro rounds, that once upon a time, instead of ice bars after a game, the recovery process was to be a slab of VB cans, a slab of Cokes, and what hadn't sold at the MCG canteens, pies, pasties, would be dropped off for recovery after a game. So, but there's certainly something about the camaraderie, the togetherness. In fact, I went to a professional rugby union club last year in the south of France, and there was a sign up on the wall. I said to the coach, "What's that?" It basically it meant professional head, amateur heart. And what that meant was the game keeps on moving professionally, but don't forget about why you play the club. So the beer after the game and spending the time together was still really important. So points Hoppy makes are still really valid.
Yeah, absolutely. Hoppy, 113 odd games for the D's. 94. We've already chatted to Todd about 94. Take us back to 94 because you played some of your best footy. Played finals against Carlton and Footscray before getting over there out to the west and unfortunately getting pipped by the Eagles. Take us back to 94 if you can.
Yeah, I think 94 was a great year, and I think of all the years that I played at Melbourne, I think it was probably one of the best groups that we did have. And again, from a talent perspective, and we got a bit of momentum there. It was a really exciting year. I think, we had a forward line with Lyon, Neat, Swartz. I think Jakovic was floating around. Martin Pike was playing as well. Sean Charles was pretty dynamic. The midfield was really strong. I think Stinger was All-Australian that year, and Todd and Glenn Lovett and Jimmy obviously dominating through there as well, and a reasonably solid backline to hold it all together as well. It was really exciting. I remember the final series, and we beat the Footscray, who they were back in the day, the Bulldogs.
I think Gary kicked 10 that day.
Gary kicked 10, and he loves talking about that one, which was pretty good. I think he was off at three-quarter time as well. And then Carlton, and you've got to remember, Carlton won the flag in 1995, and they reckon it's one of the best Carlton sides that they've put out on a park, or in AFL history as well. And we beat them in that 94 final, and the side wasn't too different to that. So we're on a bit of a roll. We came from 7th and unfortunately lost to West Coast over there, which were all too strong, who went to go and win the flag. But, really talented group, talented side, and we could have had a bit of luck. With a bit of luck, we could have gone that little bit further. But it is what it is.
Now, Paul, off the football field in recent weeks, we've seen you take up a bit of acting. Demon Brew is David Neatz's new beer. How'd you go in that little ad commercial filming session?
Ben, that's a really good question. Since that was released at 6 o'clock on Friday evening, I think the text messages and the abuse and the emails that I've had from everyone I know has been out of this world. Definitely no Matt Damon. Nita and I have been in the brewing industry for a bit as well, brewing a beer and doing one for really supporting Neil Danaher and the Fight MND campaign. We've raised over $270,000 for the campaign through the beer and the stuff that we've been brewing along the way, and then we decided to release with the footy club a Demon Brew with a bit of a retro look to it, going back to the olden days with the logos and so forth as well, which has been quite exciting. So and the uptake's been really good. So going into acting, I was the gimmick out of it all, and just to make Nita look good, it was good to have a bit of fun and
actually.
have him stand out and be the true star that he is.
Hoppy, now listen, you're a very successful businessman. You obviously know how things work. Now, you should understand that there's front of house people and there's back of house. And know your old play role, or an old footy analogy, but you're definitely the brains behind the operations, mate. You're not the front face.
That's what it's all about, Todd. Is put yourself out there. Again, it's going viral, which is what we wanted. But, I'm copping some genuine heat from everyone I do know, which is all part of it, especially my kids who are totally embarrassed by the whole thing.
Hoppy, who do you still knock around with? Obviously, your role in the past players is obvious, but who do you love going to the footy with?
Oh, look, again, myself and Nita, we sort of come through the under-19s together with the last of, and with Swatter, the last of the under-19s before it got changed to the under-18 comp back in the day. So we're obviously pretty tight. But again, Stephen Tingay, Andy Lovell, still spend a lot of time catching up with him as well. Rodney
How's
Grinter,
Stinger? How is he still the same in terms of the rig?
He's actually lost weight.
Has he?
We will go that, and he's lost it, which is just ridiculous.
My wife still talks about him a lot.
Yeah.
Didn't you guys do a calendar?
There might have been the odd calendar.
I think there was.
Yeah, there's the nude picture on the Herald Sun that he took on his roof in Brighton. That went down as well.
She's still got that, actually.
Yeah, no, he's going well, mate. He's got a personal training business. He's actually coming. He's in the chairman's club on Saturday, actually. So he's coming to the footy,
terrific.
and he's ticking along. Does a lot of property development, but and plays a lot of golf. He's got it all worked out, Stinger. That's for sure.
Hey, Hoppy, great memories. Thanks, mate. It's always a pleasure to bump into you at the footy. Thanks for joining us on Inside Melbourne.
No problem at all. Great work, guys. Thanks. Bye.
See you, Hoppy.
There you go. Paul Hopgood will be back with your questions from the outer for Todd Viney after this break.
Thanks to our co-major partner and podcast sponsor Zurich. For over 100 years, they've been ensuring the people and things you truly love. And just like you, they truly love footy and truly love Melbourne.
Welcome back to Inside Melbourne podcast, brought to you by Zurich. Starting with questions from the outer from Marcus. Todd, what bloke gave you the biggest hit whilst you were playing?
Well, there was a few. And I think,
gave out a few as well.
Yeah, I think I got my fair share, but I think Dipper did. Got me a couple of times, in fact, the Big Dipper. But the one I remember the most, and I never thought I ever suffered from concussion, but when I look back now, Darren Mullane, a famous not Port Adelaide, Collingwood player, he gave me a sling tackle on the MCG. The ground was rock hard, and I saw birdies, just in the side, and didn't have any vision for a period of time. So probably Darren Mullane.
Simon at Bremer asked about Simon Eishold. Was he intrigued as to what he's doing these days? He says, can he make amends for that missed goal all those years ago by returning as coach?
Well, he's a very good coach. He's had an outstanding coaching career up in the Goulburn Valley. Coached to Echuca. He moved to Echuca. He's got his own business in property valuation. Very successful businessman now. He's got beautiful family up there. When I moved to Echuca, we spent a lot of time with the Eisholds, and he's going really well. As I said, successful businessman, been a very successful premiership coach for the Echuca Footy Club, and he's still up there doing well.
Sam English wants to know if you thought you were the best looking rooster back in your playing day, and Karen Knight said you were.
Well, thanks very much, Karen. No, look, certainly had some competition there, as we spoke about before. Stephen Tingay seemed to be a real favourite, and we had a couple of calendars. I don't think we were professional models, but things you look back now and cringe at.
People will forget that you actually took a bit of time off to do some tennis coaching. I actually, when I was just doing my research in the lead up, I was like, geez, that's right. Todd did take, 6 months off, was it?
Well, it sort of, how it sort of morphed out, I was doing some work with Mark Philippoussis and Peter McNamara, who just unfortunately passed away the other day. But, Mark came back from a trip, I think it was 1996. I was vice captain of the footy club at the time. It was just probably that point of time where I was starting to think about the future, what I was going to do next. And then all of a sudden, Philippoussis says, will you go and travel the world with me? And I thought, well, that sounds all right. Yeah. So I actually retired from footy, packed our house up, and I went away on the tennis tour with Mark Philippoussis. And unfortunately, things didn't work out as well as I thought they were going to work out. And we were away for about probably only 8 or 9 weeks, but I actually retired from footy, came back and then...
Mid-year?
Yeah, and then played and did my hamstring about my second game back.
Is that right? Yeah. Okay.
But no, it was one of those experiences that you look back and think, what did I do that for? But in effect, it made me love the game even more.
Absolutely.
Came back and...
Sometimes you need those moments. Do you still play tennis?
No, I just don't seem to find the time.
Yeah.
Just busy
I
with...
you still go all right, though.
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind having a hit every now and again.
Fans were asked to send in a favourite memory. Jeff White sent in just another tap out of the centre in 1998. How'd you enjoy playing with a young Jeff White?
Oh, it was amazing. And it truly, I was lucky enough to be rover back in the old talk to Jimmy Steins. Jimmy's strength wasn't his ruck work. He was getting around the ground, and Jimmy used to So, Jimmy, you said you're going to hit that ball to 9 o'clock. He says, yeah, but I got spun around and hit it to 3 o'clock. But when Whitey came, he could jump over everyone. I mean, the centre bounce as we know it now, the rule changed because of Jeff White's leap. He could take a running jump and just jump over everyone. So all of a sudden, Whitey came in and he was putting it 5 metres outside the centre circle and me running onto it. So it was like, you couldn't ask for anything better.
Sorry, you touch on Jim. What sort of memories do you have with him and the character that he was around the group?
Unbelievable character. What I remember, I was number 12, obviously. Jimmy was number 11. So at some stages of my career, I had Jimmy at number 11. Number 12, mate, Alan Jakovic, number 13. So there was characters galore. Jimmy would be rubbing or having a burning candle or scent candle, trying to get his injuries right over a corked eye and really weird stuff. But obviously he had the game's record for most games played at one stage. But would do anything to get up and win, which I really respected as a teammate.
Another memory happened up at the Gabba, Sean Smith's mark of the century. How do you rate it?
Mark of the century. Yeah. I don't think I've seen a better one. I don't think I've ever seen anyone get any higher. I don't think I've seen anyone as confused and dazed as Gary Lyon did after getting the studs in the back of his head.
Dander wants to know who benches more, Jack now or prime Todd?
Well, that's a good question. Very good question. But no, I think Jack might get me. Unfortunately, I was cut down in my prime. I snapped my pec trying to do a personal best bench press. And Jack's probably the strongest player at the club on the bench press now. So I think he might get me.
Just a couple on this week, obviously take on the Magpies. There's a lot to play for from a pride perspective. Really important that we get one over the old enemy this weekend.
It is. It's really important, and Simon Goodwin's been on the record saying that we're still playing to win. Yep. We're trying to get better with every week remaining. It's been a really disappointing year, disaster, and I'm sure everyone listening would be in the same boat. So, no, we're playing for pride. We're playing for next year, setting ourselves up with a good couple of wins in the last couple of rounds to get some momentum going to pre-season. So to play Collingwood, MCG is really important, and we've shown little bits and pieces. We still haven't put 4 quarters together, so hopefully this week we can do it and have a good win. I mean, wins are special, so we need to keep going.
One last one from Hayley. It's a nice fitting one to finish off. She asked, how does it feel to work at the club that you played for, was captain of, club champion of, and now getting to see your son do the same thing?
Well, I mean, I do have to pinch myself sometimes. It's been a dream come true. The club's been a huge part of my life. It's given me so much. The person I am now has been hugely shaped by the people at the Melbourne Footy Club, fans, supporters, and mentors, my teammates. So, no, the Melbourne Football Club is a huge part of me, and it's great to see Jack doing well. It's great to see the footy club in a good state. I know this year's been really disappointing, but hang in there. We've got some really exciting times coming, and to be part of that rebuild and a special time, it's going to be great when eventually it all comes together.
Todd, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us on the podcast.
No, thanks, Clint. Thanks, Ben.
Viney, well done. As always, Melbourne Collingwood, MCG 145 this Saturday. Make sure you are there. As Ben mentioned, pre-game entertainment, Jeff Farmer, Peter Dacos in that goal-kicking challenge. I reckon the Wiz might get him. It is retro round. Collect those Zurich retro footy cards at the Zurich marquee on game day.
There's a few good Photoshop jobs, so you'll have to have a look at those.
Oh, nice tease. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Todd. That was Inside Melbourne with thanks to Zurich.